Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to this evening session, GradChat with GSA. My name is Sophie, I'm the GM for Student Engagement, and I'm here with some special guests from Careers and Employability to talk us through finding graduate employment. But before we kick off, we've still got some more people coming through, but before we kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the land of Yakat Wollongklan, or the Boonwurrung, where I'm actually currently hosting from today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and recognise the strength, resilience, and the capacity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this land. So, as I mentioned before, Tavita Lasuma, GM for Student Engagement, and GradChat is part of a series of webinars we run weekly, so 3 times a week. Tuesdays being dedicated to transition to work initiatives, and so on that vein, we have our special guests from Careers and Employability University, and we're very lucky to have them because they're very busy. Because they run their own workshops and support mechanisms for all University of Melbourne students. But in this context, they've come to support us here and dedicate this session to our graduates. So to kick us off, we have Sophie Bryant, who has a background as a secondary teacher, education officer at the Royal Parks in London, and as a development advisor at the University of Melbourne. She enjoys speaking with students to provide insights and assisting students in developing self-efficiency and finding answers to their questions. And with Sophie today is Naomi Evans, who is a dedicated careers employability practitioner with a demonstrated history of student career development in the higher education and VET sector. She is skilled in career development program delivery and career counselling and advising. So a huge welcome to Sophie and Naomi from Careers and Employability. So great to have you on the session. And so as we guide through this amazing content that we have, I want to direct you to our Q&As area of the webinar. Please, if you can, throw your questions in there. And also, if you see a question that pops in there and you say, actually, that's something I would like to ask as well, or similar, just upvote it, which is actually, I guess, is a democratic version of Zoom webinars that we can do, is it moves the question up the list. And so it allows us to see, actually, there's a few people thinking the same thing. So without further ado, I'd like to throw it over to our special guest from Careers and Employability. Welcome, Sophie, and welcome, Naomi.
Thanks very much for that warm welcome, Tavita, and hello everyone, and congratulations on making it this way, this far through semester and still being able to attend a 6 o'clock GradChat session. We really appreciate you attending today. So this session is really structured with an overview of tips and ideas about how you can best prepare to transition from being a student into a professional within your chosen industry. So Naomi and I are going to present a bit of info at the start for about 20 minutes or so. Now, to guide and to make this a practical session, you've been sent a checklist to your student email to assist you working out your next steps. So we'll present you with some information in this session, and we've got the questions on the checklist there for your reflection to guide what your next steps are. Okay, now following the session, you will be sent a resources list, which is extensive. So don't worry about writing down key resources. They're all in the resources list. Just listen, reflect, and put your questions in the Q&A. We're going to allow plenty of time at the end to address the questions. We prefer to answer your questions rather than talking about what we think you want to know. Okay, so let's get started on what we're going to cover today. So we're going to cover the job application process, okay? And needless to say, we are in unprecedented circumstances. We've heard that word so many times, and there's significant impact on the economy, and there are labour market implications. And this is something that we're seeing come through in our student appointments. Students are concerned, okay? But all we can do all you can do as students and looking to transition into the workforce or change career directions perhaps, is you can only control what you can do. Your skill development, your professional branding, your researching, and knowing your target industry really well. So let's focus today on what you can do. You can't change the world, but you can take steps to present yourself really well, okay, and do your best in this environment. So this is an overview, and the questions throughout will be asked for your reflection. So we're going to cover job application process, and then we're going to have a bit of a look at trends in graduate recruitment processes which have been impacted by COVID and transition to digital platforms. We're going to have a look at developing competitive job applications and application documents such as resume and cover letter. And we're having a think about how you can best transition from being a student to a job-ready professional. So let's go through the job application process. A job application process is also referred to as the recruitment and selection process. So it's all in the one thing. It's just basically the process for getting a job. Okay, so the key message here is that an application process can vary for roles even within the same organisation. So it's really important to read and reread application requirements. And if you have any questions, contact the organisation or the individual nominated in the job advertisement. Just a word of advice, do not leave this until the day before the application is due. Do not email a person or ring a person to clarify on the day when the application is due at midnight to say, oh, I'm just wondering if I have to address all the key selection criteria. That is not giving a good first impression, and I have encountered a student with that very dilemma. They hadn't prepared well, and it was really too late to clarify the process. So the key is be aware of the deadline and prepare and be organised. So this is an overview of the recruitment and selection process. Now, depending on the organisation and the role for which you're applying, you will go through a process. It could be quite extensive and occur for particularly graduate recruitment for roles, you know, in the following year. That process can take months. You essentially have to apply early in the year and that process goes on. So, and it may include many different components. Now, of course, during 2020, a lot of recruitment processes have gone online. So live interviews are now conducted over Zoom or digital meeting platforms. Now, recruitment and selection is a very rigorous process. And the reason for this is that employers, of course, want to get the right person for the job that they're advertising. And also it costs about $5,000 to recruit someone on average. So that's why there are these extensive recruitment processes. Not all roles will require you to do everything in the recruitment process. So you just have, that's why you need to read each job really carefully and the requirements to understand exactly what you need to do. Some roles will require that you send a cover letter, some won't require a cover letter. Some will require key selection criteria to be addressed in a cover letter. So it's really important to understand what you need to do, because if you apply for a role and you're missing components of the application, you may just be discounted right from the word go, no matter how suitable you are for the role. So I'm not going to go through every single dot point here in detail. We will be covering a lot of this, but just know the initial stage of recruitment would be an online application. I'll go into the resume, cover letter, key selection criteria a little bit more. There could also be online questions. So you might not be required to do a whole key selection criteria. There just might be some questions. There's gamification, where you might have to go through a simulated process as part of the application. This is becoming a little more common, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. You could be required to undertake some psychometric assessments, which are aligned to specific skills for the job that you're going into. There could be an initial interview over a telephone call. It could be a bit of a casual conversation from HR, checking out how you sound in responding over the phone. You could have to do an initial video interview. Also, you might be required to do an assessment centre, which is essentially a group interview, and then there could be a final interview. So it can be quite extensive. Now, let's have a little bit of a look at trends in recruitment processes. So I've mentioned that there are online applications, which could be questions in gamification. So where you would have to complete a certain task or a game, if you like, and it's testing out how you perform in that game, which could get you to the next point. There could be some component of recording a video, like answering video questions to essentially a screen. There isn't a live person responding to you, which can be quite nerve-wracking, but rest assured, we do have workshops to help prepare you for these eventualities. And of course, psychometric testing is really taking off as well. I just mentioned before that you sometimes are required to do a cover letter or no cover letter. Video applications, you could be required to record and self-introduction, for example. I've had a friend that had to do that. And perhaps video resume as well. These things are coming. Another component coming is casual and early interviews. So I mentioned HR may ring you and they may see how you respond on the phone, and that can sort of screen people and see how they respond off the cuff and respond when something's unexpected. Virtual reality and gamification coming in. So virtual reality is coming. Companies can immerse candidates in simulated 3D environments. And we've seen some recent examples where the Commonwealth Bank is using virtual reality. So it lets candidates experience the kind of projects employees handle and test their ability to make agile and smart decisions. So they're really simulating the work environment. Coles has also used this recently, and Melbourne's Metro Tunnel project's also employing this to see how people could be prepared for working underground, for example. So a lot of interesting things happening in this space. Artificial intelligence is used through LinkedIn. LinkedIn Recruiter uses artificial intelligence to help recruiters to really find talent that is out there. So important, we'll get onto that in a minute, LinkedIn profiles. And of course, applicant tracking systems are used. So these are software systems that basically look for keywords that are advertised in the position description, and they're doing a find. So we want someone who's a communicator, a team player, has analytical skills, problem solving, and this software will be looking for those words in your resume. Okay, so these are trends in recruitment and selection. Now, just highlighting for recruitment for graduate positions in 2021, this information is from the Australian Association of Graduate Employers. So over 100 organisations have responded to this survey. So as you can see there, virtual interviews were used by 42.1% of these organisations recruiting graduates into a graduate program for 2021, and for over 45% have used video interviews. So it is extremely likely that you could be interviewed through video interviews or have to record answers in a virtual video interview, or even attend an assessment centre group interview situation online. Okay, so these programs have found, graduate recruiters have found these systems to work really well, perhaps save time, organisation booking rooms. These may be continued in the future, even when we're able to hopefully meet in person again. Now, question, this is something we get asked all the time. How do I create a competitive job application? We recommend, as I said before, basically being prepared and organised, using our online resources and tools, which have been provided in the resources list that will be coming to you, attending workshops and virtual career appointments to practice going through, group activities online in breakout rooms, because this is what you'll be doing to seek graduate employment. And we also recommend seeking help, feedback, and asking questions of us and your networks. There are no silly questions, and on that, keep putting your questions in the Q&A function for us now. Okay, so competitive job applications. So I'm now going through the checklist that you've been sent. So these are your questions for reflection. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail because you've got the resources, but ask yourself, do you have a high quality resume? Okay, is it error-free? Is it well formatted? Would an employer read on past your profile section up the top? Okay, are you familiar with achievement statements? So on your resume, under positions that you've held, whether they're voluntary or paid employment or internships, have you given examples to show that you have demonstrated the skills that they're asking for in the job description with results? Is your resume industry specific and tailored to the role? Have you included keywords from the job description? Do you have the technical skills listed on your resume that they require for the role? And last one on resumes, have you received feedback from our Smart Resume artificial intelligence tool, or have you received feedback from an advisor? It's really key to get your resume up to scratch. Now, in preparing a cover letter, do you have a master cover letter, like a basic structure that you're happy with that introduces yourself? And then do you know how to tailor that to different roles and organisations? Same with key selection criteria. Are you familiar with STAR, Situation, Task, Action, Result model in addressing key selection criteria? And are you recording examples of your achievements, communication, problem solving, for example? Are you keeping a record of those to then put into your key selection criteria and on your resume? So I'll go over this quite quickly. This is a job advertisement and application document. So how do all these things fit together? Basically, you have a job advertisement position description, and that's then asking you to demonstrate whether you can do the job, okay? And that's talking about your skills and why you fit the organisation. You're going to demonstrate that you can do the job by putting together a resume, because you're going to show the experiences you've had that show the skills, okay? Your key technical skills and knowledge on your resume. You're then required perhaps to do a cover letter or online questions. That is showing that you want the job, the motivation, the values fit, the cultural fit. How do you fit into that organisation? And highlighting your key skills and achievements and attributes. The last one is key selection criteria. That is really showing that you can demonstrate the skills for the jobs with focused examples, giving actions and results, and giving examples that most closely align with the role. So the resume has to be tailored to the job description, and all your documents have to fit together to tell your story and demonstrate your skills. You make an impression by tailoring your documents. Okay, so other components of job applications is having a professional pitch. So in an interview, could you introduce yourself in a professional context or when you're networking? Can you talk about your study area, your skills and career direction tailored to an audience? Can you adapt it to speak to fellow students and then adapt it again to a more formal networking setting or a job interview? Now, in thinking about your professional pitch and how you introduce yourself, we want you to reflect on thinking about what is your unique selling proposition? What is it about you that makes you special and stand out to an employer? So do you know what makes you stand out? Okay, is it a combination of your technical skills and your ability to communicate those technical skills or systems to an audience that doesn't understand the technical aspects of what you're doing? Do you have a global perspective? Have you worked overseas? Can you bring that perspective and your bilingual skills into a global organisation? Have you done some volunteering in the sector that you'd like to go into? Okay, so what is your unique selling point? What is it about you that shows that you have motivation and that you could do that role really well? So that's another point. Be aware. Are you aware of your motivation to apply for that job in that organisation? Not just a job in the sector, that role in that organisation. It's really important that you can talk about in a job interview, why have you applied for this job? They want to know this job, not a job. Okay, and can you explain your organisational fit? How do you fit into the way that organisation works? How do you fit in to help that team solve the problem that they're working towards? Okay, now I'm going to hand over to Naomi.
Excuse me. Thank you, Sophie. That's great. Okay, so now I'm just going to take us through a few more slides to have a look at how you can actually present yourself as a professional in your chosen industry. So how can you transition into graduate employment? Well, there's a few ways that you can do so. And one of the ways is to research the industry, the job and the labour market that you're interested in. So you'll see that there are a number of organisations, labour market sites, industry reports, there are companies you can follow on LinkedIn, lots of ways. And all of these resources, as Sophie mentioned earlier, will be on your resources list that you'll receive after the session. Thanks, Sophie. Key to this, however, is to really think proactively about your job searching. So yes, there are advertised roles, sure, but really a lot of the gold is in the hidden job market. So knowing how to tap into that job market, networking with people that you know, people that you can become familiar with is really important as well. So just knowing how you can extend and research your potential network as well. So again, you can do that through LinkedIn, you can do that through a number of social and professional media sites. There's all kinds of ways you can network. Thanks, Sophie. As well, you might like to think about how you can build your skills, experience and networks at this stage. So are you a member of your relevant student clubs and societies? It's never too late to join. Same with your faculty, industry and careers events. GSA events, careers and employability workshops are important to go along to. And think about mentoring as well. It's also never too late to find a mentor, and there are plenty of mentoring programs at the University of Melbourne that you can tap into, as well as outside the uni. Being aware of your relevant professional associations is also important, and you can certainly join them as students in many cases, or follow them on LinkedIn if you can't do so. Thanks, Sophie. Checking your online presence is of vital importance. So just making sure that you have checked your LinkedIn profile, that perhaps you have a look at Facebook or Twitter or WeChat, or all of the pages that you might be on, or websites that you might be on. Google yourself. You'll be surprised as to what you can find sometimes, but it is important to do that before you send off your job applications, because human resources departments have to look at your professional presence, and it's really important that it's up to scratch. You might also want to just check that you've had a look, sorry, thanks Sophie, at your who you're following on LinkedIn, for example, and really suss out those companies, organisations, influencers, yeah, people that you want to follow, and help, you know, that will really help your online presence as well. Thanks, Sophie. In careers and employability, there are a whole host of resources for you that will help to really become, you know, ready to go and transition into that professional role. So perhaps we can take you through that in the Q&A time, but just be aware that there are a number of tools that will help you to create resumes, refine resumes, practice interviews, and so on. Okay, so there are a number of websites that can also just help in terms of some general job searching as well. So there's general sites such as Seek or Glassdoor, host a whole range of different positions, graduate and entry-level roles. Then you have Grad Connection and Grad Australia, which are graduate program directories that really yeah, are fantastic as well in terms of looking at what is available in terms of those graduate positions and internships as well, but yeah, certainly graduate programs and positions. Whirlpool is another forum that you can hop onto to get information about different organisations. It might be recruitment processes that you're interested in, but they also host internship advertisements for internships as well, or graduate positions too. Going Global is a fantastic resource. If you haven't hopped onto Going Global, please do. It's a website that allows you to look at graduate programs and graduate positions, so entry-level positions around the world. I think there's about 43 different countries internship and graduate program positions advertised there. There's also lots of information on how to apply for positions in different countries, what sort of resumes are required, how to write a cover letter, you know, in different countries. So it's really useful. Then you can also, if you're interested in particular fields such as government roles, federal government roles, or state government roles, local government roles, there are different websites such as these, which you can look into to find positions that may interest you. So again, just depending on what sort of work you're interested in, there are ethical jobs as well, for example. Thanks, Sophie. So now I guess if you're at that point where you think, okay, I've looked at this checklist, I perhaps ticked most of the boxes, or maybe there are a few gaps, have a look at your priorities following this session, and certainly after the Q&A as well. So you might like to set some SMART goals. So these are long-term, but also short-term, winnable, doable, achievable goals. Be systematic, be proactive, but also, especially in this period, be prepared to be flexible. We don't really know quite what the future holds at any time, but certainly at the moment, it is important to explore your options, perhaps have plan A, plan B, plan C, etc. And discuss your ideas with everyone, with your peers, your networks, the staff at the university. We're happy to help. Thanks, Sophie. Okay, so I think it's now question time. So if you, Tavita, would you like to tell us how this works?
Yes, sure. So yeah, as I mentioned, thank you for the presentation, by the way. Some great content that came through, and some of the resources I didn't realize, especially those Going Global. That's a good one to look out for, because I know there's a large group of domestic but also international students who are looking for opportunities in different countries, and I think that's come through on the Q&A as well. So we might start at the top here because it's got 5 votes, which is interesting. Hi, how can an international student apply for graduate roles, as most of the companies require one to be either PR or citizen? Also, with the current pandemic, if I'm an international student, would it be possible for me to apply for a job and come back during Jan, February next year if I manage to get a job? So it's a kind of a long, big question there. So I don't know whether Sophie or Naomi wanted to sort of address that one.
I can start if you like, Naomi. So this is a question that we do get a lot, and we understand there's a lot of uncertainty, and we understand that a lot of graduate roles, and particularly government roles, will not allow international students, and then Grad Connect and Grad Australia will have a restricted number of roles that seem to be open to international students. What we'd recommend for everyone, not just international students, would recommend for everyone that proactive job search. So this is something, it might be good to book an appointment with us in the virtual careers appointment, but we would recommend networking. We'd recommend updating your LinkedIn profile, making it industry specific, following certain organisations that you're interested in applying to, going to their websites, registering for their job alerts. You can then proactively contact people. We can show you how you can search through LinkedIn using the alumni tool to find people in organisations and find roles that you'd specifically like to do. Then it's a matter of formulating a really good cover letter to email out to an organisation, and really trying to find a specific person in HR, or not just sending it to general email at general.com.au. It's try to get it to a particular person, have a really good, strong cover letter, have a really good resume. Now, we do have a couple of tools that we've recommended, which are accessed through the library guides. I don't know if I want to demonstrate these live, because it can take a little bit of time, but on the resources list, there's Company 360 and there's IBIS World. These are databases that you can use to research. Company 360, you can refine and research to find companies in your particular field, and you can filter to get companies which are smaller, so they may be more receptive to an international student or any student, new graduate or soon to graduate person, approaching them to say, this is who I am, in a really strong cover letter. I'm really interested in getting a foothold in the industry, stepping stone. Do you have any work available? Remember, Naomi mentioned being flexible. Do you have contract work? Do you have part-time work? Do you have internships available? Okay, but parameters around that. Be aware that you shouldn't really be accepting unpaid internships. You know, we really want to be aware of work rights as well. But Naomi, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
That's very comprehensive, Sophie. Yeah, that's great. I think all of those suggestions are great. I think certainly being aware of I guess eligibility for graduate programs is great, and obviously to try and start doing that as early as possible. Like, I know it's really difficult when you're busy and you're studying, but perhaps try and just have a few hours a week just dedicated to career research and finding out from your networks, from your peers, from the careers and employability services, who is hiring, who you're eligible to apply to in terms of those graduate programs, and then also having a very proactive approach and targeting small to medium enterprises who are actually the largest employers of anyone in Australia, rather than just focusing on the big, the larger organisations, which unfortunately don't always have a great deal of opportunities for domestic or international students. So I just would suggest doing those things. And I think the second part of the question, Tabita, was that about leaving the country and then coming back to a position. Well, I guess that's, entirely possible if that's okay, in terms of the restrictions and visas and so on. And I guess on that question too, just to say that unfortunately we at Careers and Employability we're not lawyers. We can't advise specifically on those on visa matters. So we would just suggest, again, if you perhaps could find resources, or we can give you resources which will be helpful for you to answer those specific visa questions, if that in fact is a visa question.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Naomi and Sophie. Another one here is, do you have any tips for making your resume industry specific when you do not have direct experience in that sector?
Yes. Sophie, do you want to have a go, or do you want me to? I'm happy to try and answer this. Okay. Sure. So, yes, absolutely. I guess having a good look at the position description, okay, so really scouring the criteria and seeing what the employer wants of you, because oftentimes it is transferable skills. So these are, your communication, problem solving, teamwork skills that Sophie talked about earlier. And yes, they may want some industry specific skills as well, but they will also want, those generalist or transferable skills which you'll have in spades. So, but to go back to industry specific, have a good look and see, perhaps go through your handbooks and see, if it's something that relates to your studies. Look at the handbooks. In the handbooks, it has usually on that sort of first page or so, key skills that you'll be gaining by studying that subject. And the key skills will be what they call industry specific skills, as well as generalist or transferable skills. And you can utilize those skills that you've been learning about in your studies and place them into your resume or your cover letter or wherever is required to show as evidence of having those industry specific skills.
Yeah, and I was just going to add to that, we've given you a resource. Job Outlook is a good place to start, where you can type in a particular job title that you're looking for, and we can assist with identifying that as well. But from Job Outlook, it actually takes you to finding vacancies for particular roles. So we would recommend that's one way of finding current vacancies, or using LinkedIn or other job search platforms and mechanisms. But a good way to research what the industry is looking for is by looking at current jobs advertised. So you'll see, as Naomi's pointed out, they often do want all those transferable skills, but then you'll see that they're asking for Python, or they're using for, you know, looking for CRM, customer relations management systems, or whatever it is they're looking for, or use of a particular research tool, or, you know, whatever they're looking for. And you may not have that experience with that particular tool, but maybe you can at least research the tool. So if you are asked in an interview, have you ever used that? Then you can say, you know what it is, you understand why it's there, or what it's used for. And before that, and if you did want to include that industry specific tool or skill, you could do you know, an online module. There's lots of micro credentials. There are some free courses online. Maybe you know someone that can teach you more about Excel and pivot tables. Goodness knows I could do with that myself. I should be doing that to add to my resume. But think about what you can do, not during this time when you've got your final exams and the main thing you should be doing is focusing on your studies, but in the lead up, when you're preparing and looking for jobs, if you can show that continual professional development and upskilling, that's also important. And on your resume, you could have a section for professional development, and that could include those micro credentials or short online courses or modules that you're completing in the meantime, which is actually a really impressive thing to do, to show that you're being agile, you're upskilling, you've got lifelong learning, and that you're looking for continuous improvement. That's extremely appealing to an employer.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, Naomi. Another one here is, hi there, I've heard mixed responses about this, but is my date of birth information, should that be in a high quality resume? Thank you.
No.
I think it's a simple answer, isn't it? So I think, yeah.
No, it doesn't need to be, but in fact, it's definitely advised that you don't include that information, but unless it is relevant to the job. So if you have to show your date of birth in order to be able to be eligible to do a job, sure. But, you know, I can hardly think of a job that requires that. And you certainly wouldn't need to put it in a resume, you know, in that format.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one here. Many times international students are treated as individuals without experience even when they have years of experience from their home countries. What can we do about this?
Well, I think number one is recognising the skills that you have, because, and we see this in a lot of students, and not just international students. People say, I've only done this, or I've only done that. I've only had a cafe job, or the experience I've had in my home country isn't at all relevant to the job that I want to go into. Well, Naomi said before, and this is key, that employers are looking for transferable skills, communication. You know, have you problem solved? Can you analyse? Can you work in a team? Can you, do you have interpersonal skills? Do you have emotional intelligence? Can you manipulate data? Whatever it is. So it is important to recognise that you have shown those skills, whether it's in your home country, overseas, or in a volunteering role or an internship, even in a project. Okay, so and it's important on your resume to articulate the skills, and this is what Naomi and I were talking about before with achievement statements. So on your resume, it's not just talking about what you did, it's the skill that you have shown. I've actually got a slide further on. I'll bring that up. Sort of preempted. Okay, so getting back. So these are the skills, I should have had this up earlier, that are assessed by graduate recruiters. So communication, teamwork. So these are the things that you need on your resume. So just leave that up there for a second to absorb. But on your resume, I'll just get to that. This is what you need, the achievement statements. So verb, task, result. So this is an example: coordinated a team project which delivered ahead of schedule. So what we often see with students' resumes, and I think I'd say a lot of international students, the focus tends to be on this is what I've done, rather than showing the skill and the result to demonstrate that you can deliver this same result for an employer. So I don't know if I've explained that really clearly, but a lot of it is about articulation And this is something that is challenging for people. Like my resume could be improved a lot. It's really difficult and challenging to articulate your own skills and on a resume. So this is where we perhaps suggest booking in with us and talking through, brainstorming how to articulate your skills, because you want to have the higher level skills. We don't want to say, you know, the skills I had in my home country or in the job I held was answering the phone, doing general administration skills. We want to show you've updated the marketing strategy, or you have saved or built efficiencies or improved processes. So I think, yeah, just deconstructing, thinking about what high level skills you've shown in those roles and articulating them really well on your resume is important. Naomi, I don't know if you've got things to
Yeah, that's great, Sophie. The only thing, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting echo here. What I always say to students is, if you're thinking about the question of what do I leave in my resume, what do I take out, you know, what's relevant or what's useful here, there are three things that employers want to see in a resume, and that is, firstly, what's relevant to their role. And if that is, you know, an experience that you had as an intern overseas, fantastic. The second thing they want to know is what's recent. So that's within the last 6, 7, 8 years, not really anything prior to that, unless it's the third thing, which is really impressive. So if you've done something that is super impressive, but it was 10 years ago and it is also relevant to the role, of course, you can include it. But if you use those three things to help you to decide what to leave in, what to take out, you'll end up with and write your duty statements in this manner, in achievement statements, you'll have a fantastic, effective resume.
Fantastic, thank you. Another one here. The industry I'm looking at has very little entry-level jobs made public. All the job listings I can find are for mid or senior level. Do you have any suggestions of finding a job in the sector after graduation at the end of the year? Thanks.
So, sorry, which sector was this? I missed the first bit.
Yeah, so whoever wrote that question, if you're able to send through what sector you're talking about, maybe we come back to your question. I have another one here. How can I add my committee involvement in my resume?
Sure. Happy to say and address this one. So basically, you could have a heading somewhere on your resume, maybe, you know, depending if it's relevant to the position or perhaps not as relevant, but you could just, thank you, Sophie, you could have, professional memberships, for example, or it could, if it's not necessarily professional, it could be under extracurricular, or it could just be memberships under a simple heading of memberships, and then explain your involvement with the committee. But it's important to say, treat it like an employment entry, in that you would try and write it as an achievement statement. So talk about the roles you've had, the skills that you've gained, any outcomes or results that you can talk about as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Another one here is, I'm a student hoping to find a job as a quantity surveyor, but the beginning, how could I find a relative job without any previous experience? I cannot get experience without any chance to do a relative jobs. Thank you. I think the question there is about, you know, trying to find a job in the field they want, but they're looking for previous experience, which they cannot get without a job in that field. So I guess it's one of the circular kind of issues.
Sure. Sophie, do you want to tackle that one? Or do you want me to? Happy? I'll try. So quantity surveying. Well, I guess the way that you can do this is perhaps going back to some of the things that we mentioned earlier. Have a look at what you're already doing in your studies and articulate those skills and key knowledge and any projects that you're doing that would relate to a position in your resume and cover letter, to show that you have theoretical, you know, up-to-date, state-of-the-art knowledge about you know, that about the duties in that role. And then perhaps think about joining the professional associations that might be relevant to quantity surveying, and you could list those on your resume to show that you are in touch with your industry and you know what's going on in the field. Then I would perhaps look at if there's any possibility of doing a work shadowing experience where you actually perhaps go to an organisation for a day or two and shadow people who are working in the area, or hop on LinkedIn and find people working in the area and see if you can meet up with them for a coffee and a career chat, and really find out about what they do and what they suggest you could do. There's a couple of tips.
Fantastic. I think there's a, sorry, Sophie, I'll carry on.
That's okay. I was going to suggest also thinking about the Ask Alumni program that we have at the university, which is a platform where you can just sign up and register. And once you sign up and register, there are over 2,000 alumni from the University of Melbourne who are professionals in their fields now, and they have volunteered to be contacted by students through that platform. And this is in the resources list, Ask Alumni. So it may be that you can find a quantity surveyor or someone with experience that could be closely aligned to yours, and you can arrange through the Ask Alumni platform to, you propose a meeting, you send them a professional pitch, like this is who I am, this is what I'm looking for, would really appreciate a conversation with you, suggest a time, use the Melbourne University Zoom account, all within that Ask Alumni platform, and that's where you could meet a professional in your field perhaps. Another idea, so yeah, they would then know the most up-to-date relevant information. And just reiterating, in that meeting appointment, that mentoring one-off session, it's not a time to ask for an opportunity. It's like, you know, you don't ask someone to marry you on the first date. That would be an opportunity to impress them, ask really interesting questions, engage with them as a professional, and then an opportunity may come out of that. Okay, something else that we would recommend, I don't know if I wanted to share, I could try demonstrating the alumni tool. Should I try to do that, Naomi? What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm going to try to do a new share, so bear with me, everyone. Okay, so, okay, sharing. Can you see the University of Melbourne LinkedIn screen, everyone? Good. Okay, so I'm scrolling down and I'm looking at alumni. Just to confirm, this is not the Ask Alumni platform. This is LinkedIn alumni tool, which is big LinkedIn, worldwide LinkedIn, not just the people that have signed up for it. Now, the reason that we recommend you look for alumni are that these people have had maybe similar experiences to you, have done the same course as you. So I could look for the word, you can put in terms and you can use all sorts of Boolean searches and refine your searches. I'm looking for surveyor, and that's brought it down from 200,000 to 1,197 people. Then you can see where they live, you can see where they work, and then you can start getting an idea. Oh, I'd love to work at Turner and Townsend, or I've never heard of Turner and Townsend, who works there? You can see what they do, what they studied, for example. Okay, so you can use all these bars to filter. So let's just take that example, and then I'm going to scroll down, and this is going to bring up people that are perhaps quantity surveyors or surveyors of some sort. And I'm just doing this really quickly, so you'll need to think about the search terms you use and how you refine it. But this search isn't just for connecting with people. This is using LinkedIn for research to say, oh, this person, Alex, you know, finished in 2016. There's someone that's done construction management. So then you can click on someone and basically have a look at their profile. Where do they work? What role are they doing? How did they get there? Maybe they only graduated recently and they're recently employed. Maybe I could connect with them to ask them questions about how they got a start in the field. Okay, so there's a suggestion for you. Does that make sense? I hope so.
Yeah, great resource. There was a sort of similar question, actually, similar vein, is that, look, the international students doesn't have any work experience, but wants to apply for a job, and can they talk about the projects and assignments that they've done at university to help them get that job?
Yes, you can absolutely talk about the projects that you've done. So the projects can be put onto your resume. If I just stop that share, try to quickly share my screen again. Okay, so we looked before at the resume. So see, there's the category under education, relevant experience / projects. So this is where you could put the project on, the sort of title of the project, and then you would put those achievement statements underneath. Like that's where you could really demonstrate some technical knowledge, use of technical tools. That's where, you know, have you extracted data? Have you researched multiple, you know, resources and developed a literary review? So, and this is where you could show teamwork. This is where you could show communication and your initiative, like initiated group project meetings to ensure the project is completed to a high standard and on time. Or, you know, so this, yeah, you can definitely articulate that. And this is where we find students say, oh, I've just done research, okay, but break it down. What did you actually do? You did a literature review. You've, you know, scoped out a wide range of resources. You have carefully selected and refined whatever. I'm just making it up on the spot, but you get the idea. You really break it down, matching it to the job description to show what high-level skills you have demonstrated, and they can be industry specific. Okay, getting back to the industry questions we've had, how can I make my resume suit my industry and demonstrate the skills? If you've done a project, even working with industry, you could demonstrate the skills that way.
Fantastic. I've got a couple of sort of a couple here related to the resume. Do we need to mention our visa details on a resume? And also, what's the sort of the number of pages at the moment which is acceptable for a resume? Is it up to 3, or usually the person says it's 2? So any insights would be great.
Sure. So with that first question, Sophie, I don't know whether you have a strong opinion about it either way. No?
I wouldn't necessarily think you do. I know students do like to include it because it's a way to reassure employers that they do have work rights, but I don't know, Naomi, what do you think about that one?
Sure. So what I think is that when an employer receives an application, they assume that the person has applied for the role because they're eligible, they're able to do it, they have enough hours per week to do it in, or, you know, they will, yeah, they are essentially able to do the job. Like they could be called up tomorrow and it's like, here's the job, it's yours, start next week. So that's the assumption of an employer. I guess if you are, not 100% sure that, or you want to, reassure the employer that you are definitely able to work and these are the hours you can work, etc., then yeah, sure, why not? I guess if sometimes you will be required, if you're writing a job application online, to write in your visa details. So sometimes you are required to do so if that's applicable. But I think on a general resume or a cover letter, you know, if you're eligible and you're interested in the role, just that's all you need to say.
Fantastic, thanks.
And 2 pages is fine. So, however, it could be 3 pages in length for a resume if you've got a lot of experience, a lot of relevant experience or relevant qualifications, or, you know, research or something that you'd like to include.
And this is also, we see students who, you know, I've seen a couple of Chinese students recently who had to, they were basically new in China. The convention is 1 page, and they came to us in a careers appointment to talk about how to do it within sort of the Australian formatting, and how to basically not directly translate, but how to make the resume as impressive as it can be for the Australian context. So that was a really interesting discussion, but that's something we can definitely help you with. So, and I know in America, 1 page is sort of, you know, often you know, the standard, but basically that's also important to read for the application process. Some internships may, for example, just require a 1-page resume, and that's part of the screening. If you've uploaded a 2-page resume, maybe you'll be discounted because you didn't follow instructions. So you follow the instructions, but yeah, convention for Australia, 2 to 3 pages.
And I should say too, if it's a research position, then those rules don't really apply. So you may have, you know, 10 pages, it just depends.
Thank you, Naomi, Sophie. I've got one here. Coming from a graphic design and wanting to have a visually interesting resume, how would you format, how would the formatting affect the word or layout recognition through AI screening? Or is AI screening, filtering or searching not used for such industries?
Sophie, I'm happy to try and tackle that one. Yeah. Okay, so applicant tracking systems, or ATS, are used by most medium to large organisations now, and certainly by all recruitment companies. If you're applying for a position and you're asked to upload your documents or your, you know, files or whatever, then that's a sign that you're using an ATS system, which is designed to parse or read your documents and then search out the key terms, and then it will actually translate or create another document and then insert those terms into that. So it's quite a strange process. No, you end up, your resume does not look like your resume after it's been dealt with by an ATS. So I guess the point is, if you're thinking that you're using an ATS or you're not sure, you can always contact the recruiter to say, is this an ATS, or am I just able to, you know, upload my resume as it is? And the point of that is if you're a graphic design student, for example, and you have a wonderful, you know, resume with lots of color, boxes, tables, images, graphs, or what have you, it won't be read by an ATS. An ATS needs to read a very plain Word document, and it will read the text within, it won't read text that's in borders or in, say, you know, a table or anything like that. So it does need to be very, very plain. And if you, however, have a, you know, much more visual document, you can always ask to email it if that's an option, and that will mean that it stays intact, and yeah, someone will actually, you know, read it on their email rather than through the ATS.
And that would be to consider for if you're doing a cold approach or reaching out, you know, if you are just sending out an introductory email to talk about who you are and being proactive, then you could just attach that resume, that special presented one in that format, because that's different to the applicant tracking system, which is a whole recruitment process. Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, hope that sort of answered your question, but we're very happy to chat in appointments. We do careers appointments where we can talk one-to-one about these individual cases.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to see if we can put one more in here. Well, where can we mention transferable skills in the resume? I think we've got the perfect slide for this question. Do we mention all the transferable skills in each experience that we have? What if we don't have any achievements in the experiences that we have? What can we add to the experiences description in the cover letter? There's a few mini questions in there.
Well, this is the transferable skills need to be aligned to the job description. So always go back to the job description and see which transferable skills they're highlighting. Make sure you've got those transferable skills on your resume. So they're to be articulated through those achievement statements, which we had was the verb, task, result statements, which are those. So the transferable skill in this example is coordinated. Okay, so that's showing or organised or communicated or adapted. Okay, so they're the skills that you're showing. Extracted data. So they're the transferable skills or skills that you're showing. Now, you don't need to include under every position you've held communicated effectively to a diverse group of stakeholders to improve outcomes. If you've given an example addressing the criteria or the skill, then you can just address it once for that particular example. However, you might like to address a different form of communication facilitated presentation or presentations to different audiences, or I have developed and delivered training modules. Or so it's through those skills achievement statements that you're demonstrating the transferable skills and the high level skills that you have demonstrated throughout each of your positions. So to give an idea, you could include 4 or 5 dot points under each experience you've had to demonstrate your skills. Naomi, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just that results or outcomes or achievements can be all sorts of things. So it can be people that you got to work with, like it might be organisations that you were able to, work with, or it could be feedback from supervisors, or it could be key learning that you did through your research that resulted in you changing tact and maybe moving away and doing something differently. It can be all sorts of things. So it doesn't have to be quantifiable results. It could be qualifiable outcomes as well that are achievements in your resume statements.
Fantastic, thank you. Look, I'm going to leave the questions there. We have a few questions there. What I'll do, I'll ask that we get in contact with Naomi and Sophie via email, just to get us some, because there's probably bigger discussions with these 3 questions. So if we can send some results back, we'll email the rest of everyone that was on the call tonight just with an update on these 3 questions. First, I'd just like to thank you so much, Naomi and Sophie, for coming along this evening. It's been a wealth of information, and I know that the students are getting a lot out of it. And do you want to talk about Leica?
Oh, I was just going to mention, this is something that students can include on their resume. Some students attending tonight may be registered with the Leaders in Communities Award at the University of Melbourne. If you don't know what it is, I encourage you to have a look at it, but basically you need to do some volunteering in the wider community, university action, volunteering in university activities, and attending professional development sessions. This counts as one of them. So if you've attended tonight, you've actually done part of the requirement to achieve this award. So why not register, and then you're going to be able to complete it and include this on your resume to stand out from the crowd as well. So have a look at that if you don't know what it is.
Yeah, fantastic tip there. And so just to reiterate that we are recording this session, so we will make it live on our website later on. So Andrew in the background there will help us facilitate that. Also, I wanted to just acknowledge that on Thursday, we are running a session at 12:30 on international student work rights. We have the guys at JobWatch coming down to talk about some of the elements there, and there'll be time for a discussion there. So please, if it does interest you, please come along to that session. It should be very informative, especially with a lot of the questions that have come through. There may be something that you guys have some burning questions to ask a lawyer around your work rights as an international student. But yeah, so once again, thank you everyone for being part of tonight's session. So Transition to Work is Tuesday nights, and we're lucky to have partners like the University of Melbourne to support us through these sessions. Wednesdays, we have academic excellence, so supporting students through their academic life. And Thursdays, we connect with the communities and keep them engaged, and henceforth